Hi there, friends, lovely viewers. I am back. Been on a few months of hiatus. You know, with the new year, I'm super excited to start making book content again. I was just feeling not very inspired for the past few months, but I feel great now. I'm so excited to talk about my favorite books of the year. I read about 83 books this year. My tracking count was kind of off because there were some books I read that weren't in Goodreads, and I read a few books twice. Somewhere in the 80 range, and that's just way too many to talk about, regardless of the extra 3 that it might be adding. But I thought what I could do was talk about my top 10 books of the year. You know, give you the highlights of my reading year, give you these recommendations, and then we don't have to talk about the books I didn't like, because honestly, I do enjoy hearing about why someone doesn't like a book, and I like talking about why I don't like a book, but when I've read however many not so great books in a year, by the end, it's not like I remember those books the most. So I just feel kind of weird about sitting down and being like, these are the 5 books I hated, because at this point, I'm probably just gonna say that they weren't very memorable, and it's like, yeah, I forgot them because I didn't like them. So, just favorite books. I have a top 10 list here. I also have some runner-ups that didn't quite make the list, so I'm just gonna tell you a little tiny bit about them. So my first runner-up is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This is a nice shiny library book, as you can tell, and my review of this is that I'm glad I got it as a library book because I don't think I ever need to experience this again. It was not like a pleasant, fun reading experience, but I did enjoy it. So if you're the kind of person, I think this is a whole genre of people who like to hurt, then this is good for that. Another one is The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. I also read The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. I'm trying to finish in January. I'm revisiting this series from my childhood, and I just wanted to give it a shout out. I think that it's amazing. And specifically, I just think the way that Lyra is written, I think Philip Pullman does such a good job of not only telling you that she is special and that she is our hero, but really creating a character who is a hero and who is such a good person. The characterization in this is spectacular, amazing, gives me goosebumps. Another one, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really need to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid this year because this is the only thing I've read by her, but I loved it. I listened to the audiobook, which was an especially great experience because it's performed by a bunch of different voice actors. If you like music, I think that this is a great book for you, obviously. And then kind of a dual runner-up situation is Word Slut and Cultish by Amanda Montell. If you're interested in language and pop culture, these are amazing books for you. I personally liked Word Slut a little bit more because I just thought that it had a little bit more content to focus on. I think the reason it was hard to put one of these in my top 10 is just because Cultish especially got a little bit repetitive, but I think that that's kind of the struggle of blending an academic subject with pop writing, and so I did want to still recommend these because the content is so good, and Amanda Montell owns this genre. I think that it's so... The things that she has pulled out to linguicize about are so unique and so interesting. I think this is the new, if you guys remember Because Internet, the book by Gretchen McCullough that came out a few years ago. I think this is definitely ushering back in that era of thinking about the way we talk about things. Those are the runner-ups. Without any further ado, let's talk about my favorites. Clocking in at number 10, we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. There is a reason that it's at number 10. I understand that it's not the best book ever written or even the best romance ever written, but I think this really was the first book of the year that just grabbed me and did not let me go. I read it twice in a row, and it was also the first time that I read a romance that made me feel something so deeply, like definitely kind of got those butterflies going, and so that was just a really fun experience, and I loved both of these characters, and I really liked the way they cared about each other. Even though it was totally unrealistic, it was still a delight to read. Number 9, because I guess this was just a great year for romances, is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Surprising absolutely no one, I thought that this was a great read, and frankly, I didn't think I would enjoy this book as much as I did, even though I love Casey's writing, and Red, White, and Royal Blue was one of my favorite books last year, simply because, and this is a me problem, I don't like time travel as a thing. I have a really hard time like watching science fiction or consuming science fiction because that is just something that does not make sense to me. When I say I'm a Kurt Vonnegut fan, I'm like, but please don't try to talk to me about Slaughterhouse-Five because that went way over my head. The ensemble and the characters totally make this book, and I loved how seamlessly Casey incorporated queer history and really took the opportunity to like educate. And of course, the romance was hot, it was cute, it was... I think that if you like yearning, you'll like this book because there's so much, like they're necessarily separated, so, you know, that's how it goes. And clocking in at number 8, this was a very late entry to the game because I read it like 2 days ago, but Anxious People by Frederick Backman. I'm going to try to read the rest of his books this year because this was a book that emotionally affected me in a way that I always crave in a book. It reminded me so much of Joshua Ferris's writing, who is one of my favorite authors, and again, I have a video planned for his stuff too. It was really considering these hard things, but writing about them with a certain humor and a certain cynicism, and everything kind of came together and worked out by the end, but there's obviously still just the sadness that exists. It's not necessarily a pick-me-up book, but it is, and it's not necessarily one of the books that's like, oh, this was so sweet and inspiring, like things I've kind of heard about. The Midnight Library. It does deal with suicide, so trigger warning for that. It was emotional, obviously, as it is, but it's not like a motivating force in the story. I might not be selling it very well, but the fact that this was one of my last books of the year and also one of my favorites, and I kind of picked it up on a whim. No, I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I did not anticipate it ending up on my favorites, but the writing, guys, is so spectacular, so check it out. So number 7 is The Power by Naomi Alderman. I have realized that I like political drama fiction, which is so funny because I read political stuff for work and I'm like entirely uninterested. Like, I get it and I'm interested just as a person who exists in our country, but it's not like this driving, exciting narrative. The political drama in this book was thrilling. It was the most exciting part of this book, which is so funny because there's so many action sequences and like it's violent and grim and dystopian. Okay, maybe I should tell you what this is about. A society in which women have realized that they're like all developing this trait that helps them inflict pain on men with the snap of their fingers or just by focusing on it. And so obviously this book explores all the repercussions of that and how women run a society and change it. Obviously makes a lot of commentary, and I am so interested on how it focuses on religion and politics and everyone's kind of everyday lives a little bit. If you're interested in this concept, I would highly recommend you pick it up. If you're interested in feminist literature, I recommend you pick it up. It doesn't always make the conclusions you might expect it to, so I'd say keep an open mind when you go into it. Number 6 is Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jeshi. I think I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not, but this is a book about a Black girl and her relationship with science and religion. She's studying addiction, and her brother died of a drug overdose after he got injured and was prescribed opioid painkillers for his injury. I think what spoke to me most about this book was the intersection of religion. Even though I obviously haven't experienced church as a Black person, as an immigrant, just some of the situations that I saw in this book in a church kind of reminded me of my own experience. So it was a surprisingly personal book to me. Usually when I pick up a book that, you know, deals with an experience that I don't have, I'm just trying to go into it with an open mind and learn something new. But I feel like this book had me learning something about myself, and it was obviously very sad. I think I'm saying that about a lot of the books now that we're moved past the romance. It's not always a happy story. There are a lot of happy moments, and I just felt really connected to the main character. And I felt really connected to her brother and her mother. And if you know me, you know that I love a family dynamic in a book, and I love family tragedies. So this kind of checked those boxes for sure. Coming in at number 5, let's uplift it a little bit with another romance. Written in the Stars by Alexandra Bellfleur. Let's talk about it. Can I just say, if you like queer lit, sapphic lit specifically, if you like Pride and Prejudice, it's kind of a retelling of that. If you like astrology, it combines all of these things, so I was loving that. It is a split perspective romance, so you get to see these people, the two main characters, Elle and Darcy. You get to watch them fall for each other, and it was so good. Hang the Moon was also really good, but this was another one that came out of nowhere, hit me so hard. I didn't expect to fall in love with this book, but here we are. I get so excited thinking about it. I'm definitely going to reread it this year. I'm so excited for Count Your Lucky Stars, the third in the trilogy, but I do want to say that I'm not excited for the trilogy to end, although I think I saw on her Instagram that Alexandra has another book deal already, so thank God for that, because I don't know how I could go a year without reading her. If you're going to read one romance this year, it's fake dating. I totally forgot. Fake dating trope. So, am I selling you? Am I checking all of your boxes? Because it's checking all of mine. Alright. Number 4 on my list is Devotions by Mary Oliver. As you can tell, this was one of my favorite books of the year by all my little post-it annotation notes. I would say every third poem in this book absolutely ripped my breath out of my sternum. Mary Oliver's writing, I had a friend who described it as just like unpretentious, and I think that is such a great way to describe it. If you're trying to get into poetry, or if you love poetry, I'm sure you've read Mary Oliver, but if you're just trying to break into poetry, I would highly recommend either this, kind of long, this or one of her other collections. She writes so much about nature and knowing yourself and like living your own life, living kind of a quiet but still exciting, still connected life. That's what I think about when I think about Mary Oliver. This is such a good collection to take into nature with you and read while you're outside. I did that so much with this, which is why it took me so long to read, because it's just not the kind of thing that you want to be sitting in your house for. So read it in the spring, read it in the summer. It's amazing. It'll change your life. I guarantee it. Final 3, let me hear air horns. Number 3, from one of my new favorite authors. I will 100% read anything she writes from now on. All's Well by Mona Awad. I'm gonna say that Bunny was also one of my favorites of the year, but I have seen less love for All's Well, and I have to say that as a former theater kid and a Shakespeare lover, I don't appreciate that, so I'm going to talk about it. This is a wonderful account of chronic pain and of just generally invisible illness, a woman's slow descent into madness. Personally, I love an unreliable narrator. I think that it's one of my favorite tropes in a story, and this woman was unreliable as all get out. Yeah, she kind of becomes a witch. It's really spooky, it's really scary, it's perfect for a rainy night in, and is dealing with theaters. They're putting on a Shakespeare play, and I think it's just a really interesting setting. And I think that AWOD really excels at like getting you familiar with these very specific settings. She does it in Bunny too, with the girl's house and the seminar room, and I think she does it really well here with the stage and the bar and our main character's apartment. I can't remember. Miranda Fitch. Once you get to the ending, this can be a tricky one to understand. It might be a little bit slower just as you like digest what's happening, but it's also, my pulse was racing, and some of the introspective moments in this, it's unlike anything I've read in horror where it's so internal. It's just very interesting to have a story where the monster is neither inside you or outside you. It's not that you're the monster, and it's not that there is some evil force pursuing you. It's just bad. Number 3, clocking in at 115 pounds. But no, actually clocking in at 115 pounds, although not really, because I'm gonna say I read the audiobook for this and it was 20 hours long, and then I got this book in the mail and it's not that thick. I guess the writing's pretty small, but this is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I don't know why I thought I would hate this book. I was like, I'm not gonna get the hype. I haven't read that. I think at this point I had only read My Dark Vanessa as Dark Academia and Bunny, if you count that. And both of those, they are dark academia, but not in the mystery sense as much as I think defines the genre. It was more like that was the setting that was being used to tell a different genre of story. This was killer, no pun intended. I don't know why I thought I wouldn't like this. It's boarding school, it's academics, it's murder, it's mystery, it's tension, deals with myths and classics. I studied Latin for a long time, and so this was super fun for me to like kind of revisit that headspace that like studying classics gets you in. Although, luckily, my headspace didn't involve killing anyone, and that's not a spoiler because it happens, like, in the first 3 pages of the book. But I guarantee you that if you can get through the first 5 pages of this book, you will be absolutely hooked. And I don't say that because they're hard to read. Actually, the lines from the first few chapters are the ones that are still stuck in my brain here. But I'm telling you, that the first sentence of this, I was like, stop the brakes. I was literally driving in my car and luckily pulled up to a red light because I was like, did I just hear some of the most beautiful writing I've heard in my entire life? I can't wait to read The Goldfinch. I don't know if I'm gonna get to it this year. I'd really like to try. I think that what this one comes down to is just that you can't argue with the fact that she's killing it. She's killing the storytelling game. And then it just was right up my alley, so I really liked it. And number 1, I don't have a physical copy, gonna put it up here, In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This was a memoir told through metaphors. Each chapter is telling a slightly different story or different anecdote or reflecting on research, and it is about the author's an abusive relationship that she was in, and it's really harrowing to read. It's, I think, one of the few books I've read in my entire life where I walked out of it just feeling like I had exited battle. I felt like I had been at war listening to this book, which I always try to listen to a memoir in audiobook form, read by the author, and in this case, that was kind of tricky. It's such like beautiful writing, and you're personally, I was listening to it feeling like so grateful that I got to experience it and feel these emotions, and then remembering that it isn't made up, it was real, and these aren't just poems and they aren't just short stories, that this is something that happened to someone, and then also getting to feel really lucky that I find that so unbelievable that anyone could be treated or treat someone else that way. Another thing that made this a favorite was the research that Machado did and kind of the studies that she referenced about abusive relationships among lesbians and how they go basically unacknowledged, I guess would be the right word, by the field of psychology, counseling, even within the LGBT community. I just felt like this was possibly by far the most important book I read this year. I highly recommend you pick it up. It rounded out my nonfiction reading really nicely. I think that this is a pinnacle of creative nonfiction writing. I don't know what else to say other than I think that you should read it. And I think that you should read all the books on these lists, but I understand if you don't want to. I hope that I sold you on my top 10 books of the year. This was a hard list to narrow down because I had a pretty good reading year. There were obviously some flops, as there are when you read that many books, but I feel like I learned more about my taste and the kinds of authors I like, the kind of genres I like, and what I don't like in a story. So I'm hoping to put that all to the test in 2022, and I'm excited to do it all with you guys. I think it'll be really fun. I think it'll be a great year, and I'll be back soon with a January TBR video. We'll just get right back into it. If you read any of these books, if you like them, if you hated them, do you want to tell me your favorite book of the year? Please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you've got, what you read in 2021. Oh my god. And what you're excited to read in 2022. If you like this video, shoot me a like, click that subscribe. But until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.